Thank you for coming. In the preparation for this session, we thought we would sit here with another 3 or 5 people drinking coffee. So I'm very happy to see that a lot of people are interested and or are early birds here at the MX Summit. We achieved to stop this session at about, I think, 8:50, so everybody can get to the official start of the summit in time. Maybe I can give you a short introduction to us both. This is Robert Feckel. Robert is the head of media analysis at Ausschnitt. He is in the companies for 8 years now, and for 2 years he's responsible for the media, or since 2 years he's responsible for media analysis. At Ausschnitt, my name is Ingrid Morkens. I'm at Ausschnitt since 1997, and I am responsible now for all products and the innovation of the company. For those who don't know Ausschnitt, a few just in brief, we are located in Berlin. We are on the market, on the German market, since 1946. We have about 300 employees and serve about 4,000 clients with full clipping service, as well as media analysis and abstracts and things like that for classical media and social media. But what we want to talk today about is our ideas when it comes to crisis analysis. We want to share our approach, our ideas about the measurement of reputation damages during crisis situations. We started with this a couple of years ago, and as you see, it took us some time. What we wanted to achieve was a sort of prediction, a possibility of prediction about how far an ongoing crisis damages the reputation for a company or a brand, to give our clients an early possibility to react and to manage the problem. But before we start to tell about our ideas, it might be interesting to get to know for everybody of us in how far you are experienced in this question. So I'd like you to answer the question if you measure reputation damage during crisis now. Maybe you can raise your hand if you do that. So it's quite some people. And I want to ask another question. Who of you knows about attribution theories when it comes to the question of causes and responsibilities in crisis? So it's not so many. So this is good, because then we won't, how we say in German, carry the owls to Athens, or I looked it up. I think in English it's like bring the coals to Newcastle. I don't know. And I have to tell you before we start that we wrote everything down, because we are not native English speakers. English is for us a foreign language, and so we wrote everything down in a sort of white paper. We brought it with us, so if you're interested, we can give one exemplar to you, or you can give us a business card and we can send it by email. And so what we tell you here in brief is more explained here in the white paper, which is written by a colleague of us who was in former times in our company in media analysis, and now work as a scientist just in the field of communication psychology. Okay, so what are we talking about? Crisis. Maybe we should have a look on what is a crisis. As we see it, a crisis is surprisingly a complex event. So it has a start and a stop, and mostly the beginning is not known in before, or not long term in before. It demands. Thank you. It demands a swift and public reactions when it is a crisis in companies or for brands. Mostly it is unplanned. It's of an indefinite length in most cases, and during the crisis, for the company, it's subject to a little influence. What happens in a crisis? Ich kann das nicht sehen. Communication on the part of media. The media explains, or we can say dictate, how a crisis is interpreted, and thereby shape the image of a company. And there it comes then to damages. Media transform thereby the crisis according to their logics and to the criteria behind that logics, like, as we know, which are news factors, the strategies of personalization and moralization, and when it comes to crisis, mostly it structures the reporting according to the question of guilt and responsibility for this crisis. And when media talk about crisis, it's always about numbers, numerical information, like the number of deaths and the number of victims, the number of economical damage, for example. The media will give background information to the crisis. So what's the surrounding, what did the company in earlier times, in that sort of cases, and what structures the media reporting as well, is that it's not only journalists talking, but there are various groups of speakers trying to explain the situation. And what is interesting in this, that these various groups of speakers explain figures and causes named responsible for this crisis in different ways. And this is where the attribution theories are getting interesting for us. Those attribution theories come from psychological research or economical psychological research. So they deal with crisis like on a personal level, as well as, if you want, on a bigger level. And they all question features, causes and intentions of behavior directed towards selves or others in a crisis situation. And there are different theories. I think that this research started like in the early 70s, so we won't deal with all of them, but we have to find a workable approach for this, for us, for PR measurement. And a workable model of interpretation gives us the description of latent and manifest risks to reputation, resulting from the responsibility perceived by stakeholders and the media. And there is one approach which is the most practical in our way of thinking, which is from Bernard Weiner. And he has a model of a description of attributions, which we can use for media measurement. And this model divides the attribution in the causes on the one hand, like is the cause of the crisis stable or is it variable? For example, there is a heavy storm and an airplane comes down or has really difficulties. Like you remember a couple of years ago, there was this plane landing on the Hudson River, which you can see as a crisis for the aircraft company. And and the question always directly will be, who is responsible for that, what happened? So was it the weather which was responsible for a difficulty in flight? And is this an unnormal situation? Then we will have a variable cause for the situation. If we say that it's always very stormy weather on the Hudson River and the airplane came down by accident, then we will have a stable description of the situation or the cause. On the other side, when it comes to crisis, and it's not always not only about causes of crisis, but as well on responsibility. Who is responsible for this? Who is guilty for this? And this is explained or understood by the location of responsibility. When it comes to company crisis or brand crisis, you can divide the location of responsibility in the internal side or external side. So, internal means, is the company responsible for the crisis, or is the surrounding, the external, responsible for the crisis? And this gives us quite a good metrics, thank you, to explain what is happening in a crisis reporting. As we can find that it's most critical if we find descriptions of crisis which are internal and stable, and we find non-critical reporting of crisis if it is external and variable. And according to this model, we can explain crisis and we can learn about the long-term reputational damage of crisis. This is about the theory. Maybe you have questions to this? No? Okay, so we can...
One question.
Yeah?
Is this presentation going to be available?
Yes.
Yes. And it is even more, we have a white paper.
Yes, I
So,
just wanted about the presentation.
okay, the presentation is available, yes. So maybe we can show in a case study what we mean by this theory.
Can I just just one question? Looking at this, so the four areas on this look like, you know, they have more or less the same weight. But then when you think of how the media would report on this sort of stuff, it's quite clear that, you know, if competence gets eroded, then that has a much bigger weight than something that gets attributed to happenstance.
Yes.
So you find that very clearly in your data, I assume, when you apply that to actual analysis data.
Yes,
Do you have
yes,
no case
yes,
studies, no?
yes.
No. Okay. Just a remark.
So let's have a look in the data. Who of you remember the Toyota recall in 2010? A lot of people. Are you Toyota drivers or not? Okay, I'm one, but I didn't have any trouble with his recall. What happens for all of them who didn't remember? In January and February 2010, when Toyota was forced to recall 5 million cars, the media saw the company as solely responsible. The topic was very an emotional discussion because nearly 50 fatal incidents in the USA triggered this topic. And the idea was, as you see here, or the cause was, the media saw the accelerator or the gas pedals. Later on in the year, some floor mats, but in January and February, the accelerator pedals or the gas pedals was the main cause for the media. And if we jump to the end of the crisis event, you see on the second point, in July 14, one of the opinion-leading newspapers in Germany, the Frankfurter Allgemeine, reports Toyota drivers themselves apparently responsible for accidents. That means, as you all know, it doesn't depend if you are really guilty or you are really the cause of a crisis. What's the media do with these things? And also the American Department of Transportation was a great critic stakeholder in the early beginning of the crisis says after July, the drivers themselves bear more of the blame than Toyota. You can't buy for this, or Toyota can't buy anything for this. 5 million cars are going to the recall, a lot of money, a lot of revenue increase, and this is the problem of this. The goal of our media analysis, it's very simple, divided in 3 sections. We want to identify the definitions or explanations of cause and responsibility of different stakeholders. We want to see which group of speakers contribute to the medial discourse, and which, of course, are named by the individual groups. And the last one is to identify the potential damage of the company's reputation, as Ingrid explained before. So what's our sample group? As I said before, we're looking at the opinion-leading German media, the consideration of daily, weekly, and boulevard papers allows us to have a compare statements about the medical discourse. So, talking about the history of this crisis event in the beginning, as you see above as a timeline, we had at the end of January first articles reported that a recall maybe is possible. At the end of January 28th, the recall action starts, and now the media begins to search for the causes, and they are coming very fast to an idea that the company is responsible for this. At the mid of February, the US Senate asked the CEO of Toyota, the top manager of Toyota, for a hearing in the US Senate. That's unbelievable, I think. And the first reports on revenue decline printed also in the mid of February. Then the recall of further Toyota models starts in mid of February, and Toyota had a cutback of production in the end of February. In this 2 months, over 100 million contacts was made in only a few big newspapers in Germany. A lot of spectators, a lot of readers had the chance to get all these informations and to build up their own opinion. Let's have a look at the top issues divided in the major groups: company, products, and management. The company is primarily emphasized with regard to its sales and revenue developments, as well to the issue image confidence, but also to the part deficits in communication. They are frequent topics by the leading media. At the next step, we're going from the traditional media impact analysis to the combined solution to look at the share of attributions according to the dimension of cause. As you see here, and remember to the chart Ingrid shows us, we had a huge amount of attributions concentrated of the internal company-related causes. Over 90% of the sequences are located in this section, and only 8% concentrate on the responsibility located outside of the company. That's of course really hard for this for the company, as well as the view on the stakeholders. or the share of the attributes of the media actors. It's normally that journalists had a great amount, especially in crisis events. Toyota itself has about 15%. If you are on an ongoing communication with journalists, maybe this amount is a little bit bigger. But in crisis situations, journalists and of course other experts are the main opinion driver in this situation. If you look at the different internal attributions, we can divide this, of course, in two sections: the stable causes and the unstable causes. And most often mentioned by the media are the technical problems pertaining to Toyota. And on the other side, the journalists find a simple cause for this problem. They say Toyota had a rapid growth in the last years, and there's a lack of quality, and that's quite normal. At the end of the story, as we see before, on the 14th July, that isn't the problem. The media make it to the problem. And what's very interesting and important for us is...
Somebody has a question.
Yeah, of course.
The image, from where do you get the data on how the red line?
The red line, sorry. The red line, the reading of the diagram is very easy. This is the first step. More left.
No, it's not so easy.
More left, the red line, more critical, where we get the data outside the reportings. It's a classical media analysis to tonality to these topics. If repeated technical problems are mentioned in the media, we have a look, are they mentioned in a positive way or in a negative way?
Okay, it's tonality.
It's
perfect. Thanks.
That's the way we do this. And
Please ask questions.
let's pick up the point which...
There's another question.
To be honest, I didn't get the tonality part. With the red, what do you mean?
So different causes can be mentioned. They can be internal or external, and every cause can be mentioned in a neutral way, or in a critical way, or maybe in a positive way for the company. So what we code is the mentioning of a cause and combined with this cause the tonality. And this is what we see here. We see the causes mentioned, which are the blue lines. I can show you. See here. So in unstable causes, flaws with gas pedal were mentioned mostly. And they had a critical tonality. Yeah, and you see here, for example, company philosophy was mentioned just, I don't know, 1 or 2 times. You see this? But they had a quite positive tonality in the average.
Yes.
Is this okay for explanation?
And where's the neutral line?
Pardon?
Chart?
The neutral line?
Yeah. So is it just intensity that you depict?
Yeah, the neutral line would be this one.
Okay.
But it's just an average. So it was a tonality on a 5-point scale. Yeah, and this is the average, so this is neutral.
Okay.
So if it is a one neutral commentar, the line was in the middle, or is it or the 2 commentars or 2 sequences we analyzed, one very negative and one very positive, it's also in the middle. So this is absolutely what Ingrid said, a average line. Yeah.
Yes, could Could I just ask what the, then the red, yellow, green, and is it black or green? Is it just,
It's dark green.
is it meant to be negative?
Very positive, yeah.
Yes.
So the very important point is that the media also additional recognize the lack of communication by the company during this acute phase of the crisis event, and this had also a very negative effect. Let's have a look at the presence or value of the attributions, of course, and responsibility of the external attributions. As you see, the basis only 64 attributions of external causes, or 8%, are mentioned or printed by the media. And the journalists at this predominate the stable causes, and they're beholding suppliers and public authorities for responsible. And remember, at the 14th of July, the behavior of drivers plays hardly any role in this discussion in the media. The behavior which, according to what we know today, is the reason of these significantly to this disaster was not any topic at the beginning of the year 2010. And what means this to the reputation damage? As Ingrid presented before, we can divide the location factors and the stability factors and see what happens to a company or to an organization if concentration is on special location and stability factors. And what we see in our analysis, this chart also with two informations. One information is the amount of presence of value and the value of attributions, of course, and responsibilities. See the amount. Internal variable, situational, is the most concentration on. There are nearly no or hardly any information to the external stable or variable, the happenstance, and also quite a lot to internal stable regarding to the competence and ability of Toyota. What means is to the chance or to the risk of an damage of reputation. You had a very small or low threat to reputation at the externals, happenstance, and also the external stable. Here noted in the reports with supplier, with marketing condition or market conditions. You had a temporary threat to reputation on the internal variable situation, the actions of the company, and you had a very high threat to reputation for long term if there's an internal stable attribution report a lot of. Then is the competence and the ability of Toyota damaged for a long time. As we see here, we can say, and this is what we see also in the following media reports, that is a temporary reputation damage for Toyota. Years ago, Toyota was the world championship in quality. Right now, this is a problem for Toyota in the 2011. The people talk, oh, once again a recall, but only 10,000 or 200,000 cars. But remember, there was 5 million cars away. So it's going slowly but surely away, but Toyota has always a problem on this. Not a quality problem, but a communication problem as well. When we see at the next chart the types of crisis, the amount of perceived responsibility is related to specific types of crisis, as we see in the chart before. And this can be divided according to the degree of responsibility. Going down, the degree of responsibility increases, and also the danger for the affected organization or the affected company increases. And you can, there's a corresponding to the factors of location and stability as well, as we marked up here. If you had a concentration on external variable attributions, there's a minimal danger for an organization, and if you had a internal stable situation, for example, if Toyota has a really quality problem with the accelerator pedals or with the gas pedals ongoing, and the management can't do anything to change this problem, this is very stable, and Toyota have to or has to recall more and more and more cars, and then they had a really reputation damage for years and years and years. But at this moment, we see on the media reports or reporting that it is a temporary damage of the reputation with our media analysis.
Do you have any sort of data evidence how that actually correlates to how consumers perceive Toyota in market research data or consumer insight or something?
No, we didn't look at that.
Okay.
It was just a question on a media evaluation basis.
Okay.
But you should, surely, you could do that, yes. Yes.
What we had is in the reportings, of course, the topics that Toyota has a cutback in his production, at the first signals of this crisis, and so this is the only thing, but not economical data. Okay. So one or 4 short tips for your budget planning. What's the type of this combination, or what's the basics of this combination of media impact analysis with the approach of economic psychological topic within? We see not only in our case study as well in the practical way that this combination is nearly similar to extensive issue or reputation analysis. So if you present or say this sort of analysis, it's nearly similar in the budget is used for. You have to notice that these, especially in the beginning of the analysis, the additional briefing and expenditure especially for the facilitation to the analysis and to the coders need much more space and time and of course costs within. And the very important thing is to get time for the start of this analysis special attribution dimension, find these special attribution dimensions, and this will also take additional time, of course. And at last, it's quite normal, like issue or reputation analysis. It's the practical coding takes more time than a normal traditional analysis. It's the same analysis if you put these on a sequence level. The coding time is higher, and maybe your costs are of course higher.
Sorry, do you mind me asking what was the turnaround time for something like this?
Pardon?
How long did it take for this project to be done?
Normally, I think if you have an ongoing system, it's not longer than a normal reputation analysis. Before, you have to think more, I think 30% more than on a reputation analysis.
For the setup, you
For
mean?
your setup, yeah. For the setup to find the right attribution dimensions, and for training of coders, you need a little bit more. But if you go patient with this, it always on the other side, on the other analysis, you find becoming quicker and quicker.
Thank you.
Sorry, how long does the reputation analysis actually normally take? You said it's sort of, you said like a normal one plus whatever percent, but
Yeah, normally make 1 week or 2 for the preparation for setup.
okay.
And it depends on the mass of the team working on it, and on the amount of reportage you have to check for get a good briefing and a good setup for this analysis, and then start with coding, pre-tests, etc., etc.
Ingrid, Robert, thanks very much. Really interesting presentation. Quick question. I didn't see any mention of online and social media there. I may have missed it. But certainly in our experience now, online and social media are far more bigger influencers. And of course, the problem with them is that they go across international boundaries. Do you take this into account?
Yes. But we showed you a case study, so we didn't show the real client data. But surely it's just what we wanted to present here is just a way of, an approach, just a way of doing it. And surely the method for online or even social media is just the same. In social media, when it comes to social media, it even gets more interesting, because then you can see on the social media evaluation level the connection between the stakeholders. So you can see who is the driver in this process of giving the attributions.
And dare I ask a supplementary question? Did you use automated or human analysis to look at online and social media?
Of course, human analysis. Yes. I know that you don't want to hear this. I know that you want.
So how many pieces of social and online media did you actually look at using human analysis?
It was a very small media panel, as you see.
Right.
So I think we had at this time 170 report on this, small pieces to show how this approach.
But the volume of tweets on something like this is going to be tens of thousands.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
But the discussion is old, Mark.
Sorry, Robert. I'm not. It's not personal.
Not on you. Not on you.
I think I've made my point, so I'll shut up now.
It's the idea to have a small piece of media panel, or to have a huge, broad view on this. And you are on the way right. We say, keep in mind that social media had a bigger amount of this, and we are talking about this automated thing. Yeah.
I missed the first 5 minutes, so you may have mentioned this, and apologies. But Is this on top of an ongoing research project you've got with Toyota?
No,
This analysis?
no.
Okay.
It's just a single case.
Right, because what would be really interesting now, of course, is to, 25 months have passed or
Yes.
something, to do the same study again and see how and if everything has gone back to normal, and then actually talk to Toyota and look at their communication, their tactical and strategic efforts during that time, and then relate it to, how things have developed again, because that would be quite fascinating, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but this was just a single case study, so it's not ongoing. It's a question of budget as well.
In the crew.
Yes, Helen Whitmark here from Retriever. But the numbers are real, or it's a case study, but the numbers are real, is it?
Yeah, real numbers.
Because if you don't mind, I have a question about one of the results. If I interpreted the chart pie correct, you said that 15% of the publicity was driven by Toyota themselves.
Yes.
That's correct, yeah?
That's correct.
Do you think that is, due to your experience, is that a successful number?
It could be better. Well, this is not worse than I expected before. Especially it was a big crisis event. But as I said in my explanations, I think that you could rise up this share if you do a continuously communication with the journalists or with the media. It's quite normal. We are only human beings, and if a company is in a crisis event and you didn't talk before to the journalists won't hear you and won't write what your expectations are, what your opinion is, and if you had a good, if you are in a good condition with the journalist. They maybe give you a phone call more than on the other side.
And you have to keep in mind that this was a worldwide crisis for Toyota. And we just looked on the German media reporting.
Because I'm sure that the balance between the external and internal parameters would be different if they had been more visible in media.
Yes. But what we found was that the internal location was driven by Toyota itself. So they took the responsibility when they talked, and they said, "Okay, we have to check our quality levels," and so they themselves weren't sure what was the reason, what was the cause for the problems. And they reacted like, we don't know. They were quite open. And therefore, if we did the analysis for Toyota, and we saw that a lot of internal responsibility was taken by Toyota itself. Any more questions? Okay, then I think we close this session. It's now 7 to 9, and we can go to the official start of the summit.